Limmy's World of Glasgow. Phil.
Everyone knows that the people of Glasgow are so friendly, so warm, that if you ask them for directions in Glasgow, they'll take you there themselves. Now, because of this, I get lost quite easily in Glasgow, never bothered learning how to get around. There's no need. And because of that, I ended up in the middle of nowhere, ended up underneath the motorway, never had a clue where I was. And worst of all, I had about 5 minutes to get to Central Station to catch my train to Blackpool. No one around to ask directions, no taxis going by. I really was at a loss. Then I heard from behind me, "Are you lost, mate?" Turned around and there's this bloke in a wheelchair. You know, one of the motorised ones with the joystick. I said, "Yeah, mate, I was trying to get to Central Station, haven't got a clue where I am." He says, "Don't worry, mate, I'll take you there myself, let's go." I said, "There's no point, I've got around 5 minutes to get this train, never gonna make it." He said, "Don't be silly, hop on, let's go." I said, "Hop on?" He says, "Yeah, jump the wheelchair, let's go. You'll be there in no time." I said, "Okay." Sat in his wheelchair, sat in an armrest. He gave his joystick a little push and it was like 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. Honestly, the speed of this thing is amazing. I feel like getting one myself. We were driving up this hill that would have taken us around a quarter of an hour to walk up. On the way up, he says, "Listen, I'm not going to be able to take you to Central Station myself. I've got some business to attend to, but I can sort you out with another escort." I said, "There's no problem, I'll take it from here." He said, "Never, never in a million years." He said, "John, mobile." I was wondering who's he talking to until I saw the Bluetooth, you know, the little phone in his ear. A couple of seconds later, he says, "Yeah, John, is that you? Listen, where are you?" He says, Good. I've got a guy here, English guy up from Blackpool. He's got himself lost and needs to get to Central Station in about 3 minutes. He said, "Can I drop him off to you at the top of Sauchiehall Street and you can take him from there?" He said, Okay, John, see you there. End call." He said, "You probably heard that. I'm going to get some guy to take you there." I said, this is fantastic, mate. A great help. To be honest, though, I'm still not sure we're going to make it." He said, "Not if John's got anything to do with it. Here he is." So I assumed we were at the top of Sauchiehall Street, looked about for his guy John, couldn't see him, until I spotted this other guy in a wheelchair waving over. I thought, is he serious? This is insane. We're rolled up to John. John says, "How you doing, Peter? Take it this is a guy." And Peter says, "How'd you guess?" "Here he is, it's all yours, see you later, mate." So pops off Peter's wheelchair, and hops onto John's wheelchair. I didn't even need to ask permission, he would have insisted anyway. Sits on the armrest of the wheelchair, he says, "Where you headed?" I said, "Central Station, driver." He said, "Okay, hold on." Turns his wheelchair around, points it down this hill, gives the wheels a little push just to get started, and then sticks his hands in the air. He says, "What's your name, mate?" I said, "Phil." He says, "Get those hands in the air, Phil. This is going to be the ride of your life." I said, "You're joking." He said, "I'm not, here goes." And we absolutely shot down that street. It was like a roller coaster. This guy, John, and me sitting on top of him, going like the clappers down this street with no one in control, with our lives and the lives of those in front of us left to the hands of fate. We must have been doing around 30 miles an hour, bombing it down, and he says, "Right, Phil, hold on tight." I grabs onto John with dear life. It comes to a screeching, skidding halt. I looks around, I said, "Where's Central Station?" He says, "This is as far as this train goes, mate, but if you nip into that shop there," and he points to this little newsagent's, "just ask for Rob and he'll take you all the way there." I said, "Brilliant, John, the ride of my life, mate, I'll never forget it." Hops off the wheelchair, gives John a wave, and nip into this shop, and there's a guy with his head in the fridge, stacking it with Diet Coke and so on, and there's this girl behind the counter. I said, "Is Rob around?" The guy in the fridge wallops his head off one of the shelves the second he hears his name and says, I'm Rob." I said, "Oh, you're right, mate, I didn't mean to bump your head. I'm just looking for directions to Central Station." He stands up, turns around, and I think, oh shit, the bloke's got downs. I said, "Listen, it's okay, I'll just find my own way." Started to make my way out the door. He says, No, I know Central Station. I'll take you there." I said, "It's okay, mate. I've got about 1 minute to get there. I've missed my train. You know, my choo-choo train. I'm gonna miss it. He said, you won't miss your train. And get this, he picks me up. He lifts me up and carries me like a father picking up a little sleeping child. He said, you can't miss your train. You can't. And he runs with his. He runs. He runs faster than the wheelchair. The strength of a bear, this boy. I weigh around 15 stone, but I must have been light as a feather to him. And naturally, of course, the whole street watching. This bloke with downs carrying this fat bloke with long hair at 300 mile an hour down this street, bobbing and weaving in between all the pedestrians, people jumping out the way. The guy was like an android. 20 seconds later, we're at Central Station. He puts me down on my feet, gives me a pat in the head, me. He said, will you miss your train? I says, there's no chance now. I said, here, Rob. Went into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, gave him a $5. I said, that's yours, Rob, keep it. He said, I like you. I said, I like you too, Rob. I'm Phil. He said, I'm Rob. I said, yeah. Went into Central Station, delighted to see the train was delayed by a couple of minutes. I had time to get me ticket, get a bit of chocolate, and get me train to Blackpool. Great guys. Peter, John, and Rob. Oh, I wonder what he got with this $5.